Hi, how you doing, and welcome back to another video on the channel. What we've got for you in today's video is the weekly video that we do when we look at the most bought and sold players in FPL this game week, and we just discuss them and what I would do if I owned them or if I wanted them, whether they're worth it or not. So hopefully it helps you with your transfers for this game week. If you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. The support is greatly appreciated. We've had some more subscribers this week and it is free to do so, so if you can help us grow as a channel, that would be appreciated. Let's take a look at player number one. So the first player we're going to look at is Ollie Watkins, and he has been on the other end of this list in recent game weeks because he has been the most sold player for the last couple of weeks now, and this week he's the most bought in player. And I do hope that the people who are buying him in aren't the people who sold him last week, because we did sort of say last week that he was the player to get in rather than sell. Just with the fixtures coming up, he's a proven Premier League player, and if I didn't have him, I would be getting him, because it's not just the next couple of game weeks that look good, it's all the way up to that Liverpool game really, because Spurs and Man United as defences aren't that great, and Aston Villa are a good attacking team. Now you might question whether Champions League rotation is maybe affecting his minutes and consistency a little bit, and that remains to be seen, but he is still a great option, and I own him in my own team, and I'm definitely not thinking of selling him anytime soon. The next player on this list is Erling Haaland, who has also probably been on this list, I think, every week so far this season as one of the top three most bought in players in FPL. And you can totally understand why, really, because the form he's in, there is no difficult fixture for Haaland right now. You think he's going to score in every game. And even if you do think that that Arsenal game is a bit tough, look at the fixtures from Newcastle onwards. I think if you don't own him by game week 6, there's going to be a lot of people who are wildcarding around that time who will be getting him in for that Fulham fixture and onwards. Just like Watkins, I do already own him, and if I didn't, I would be doing everything I can to get him in my team within reason. You know, I wouldn't be taking massive points hits, but I would be making his transfer a priority as soon as possible. So the third player on this list is Luis Diaz, and I was kind of surprised to see him being bought in by quite a few owners compared to everybody else, really just because his minutes aren't as secure as we maybe once thought. He was always a rotation risk, but with the Champions League and sort of he was coming back off international duty last week, and the blank that he had in game week 4, I'm not too sure as to whether I would get him in my team. He was really close to being bought by me last game week. I was going to swap him for Anthony Gordon. But right now, it's almost like you've missed the boat a bit, because although the fixtures do look quite good, you're expecting him to do it in 60 minutes maximum, really, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was rotated out of the starting lineup for one of the next 3 games. So if you were going to get him in, I still think he's a good fantasy league option, but you have to be at peace with the fact that he might not start or he's going to get taken off early. And if you're okay with that, then go for it. But if you're going to be someone who's going to be really disappointed when that happens, because it will happen, I would look for somebody else. So the first player on our most sold list, and he is the highest sold player this game week, is Alexander Isak. And I think if you're maybe moving from Isak to Watkins, I get it. I personally have him in my team and I wouldn't be selling him. I've never once thought about selling him this season, and I've had him since game week 1. I think Newcastle really will level out a little bit with no European football, and you're up against other players who will be trying to balance that Champions League, Europa League slot. You know, and let's say in a few weeks you've swapped Isak for Watkins, say, and you're worried about whether Watkins is going to start in the Premier League or get taken off early because of the Champions League. You're not going to have that issue with Isak. You know when he's fit, he's going to be getting 90 minutes for Newcastle week in, week out, and likely going to be scoring 20 goals a season. I know the fixtures aren't great, but for me, the most difficult fixtures, Man City and Arsenal, they're at home, and the away fixtures look a bit easier. And then you've also end up with teams like West Ham at home as well, and that's not too bad. I do think Isak, if I had him, which I do, I'm not selling him. Now next up is João Pedro, and he's another one like Watkins who was bought loads last week, the last couple of game weeks, and now he's being sold by quite a few people as well. And just like Watkins, I really do hope that the people selling him aren't the people who have just bought him, because you knew when you bought him what the fixtures look like, and those fixtures, they don't look great on paper, but just because he's missed one game doesn't make him an automatic sell. You probably sold him in order to facilitate somebody like Salah in your team as well as Haaland. Now, that doesn't make it a bad transfer last game week. It just means you've not had the immediate returns. So I think if you've had him for a while and now you want to sell him because the fixtures aren't good, I think that's all right. But I wouldn't be panic selling him. I think you're really limited on how much you can do that in FPL, and eventually that sort of strategy is going to catch up with you, because there's going to be other areas of your team that need addressing as well. So João Pedro hasn't suddenly turned into any worse of a pick than he was last game week, unless of course his injury news develops and he's out for mid to long term. Then you would obviously look at moving him on. So the final player on this list is Gvardiol from Man City, and he is another player who I actually own in my team. Now, I am considering selling him. I understand why people have sold him. If I was selling him, I would sell him for an Arsenal defender or Trent if I could afford Trent. The reason I would do that now is mainly because of his minutes rotation risk, because the fixtures for Man City look really good. And let's say if I was getting in an Arsenal defender this game week, you'd be saying, well, you're swapping a Man City defender for an Arsenal defender. They're playing each other. What's the point? Well, the point would be is if you're really on a budget and you can't afford him to drop in price, or you can't afford Gabriel, say, to rise in price. And that would be the motivation for making a quick transfer here, is just for price reasons. I think if you're unsure as to whether to sell Gvardiol or not, I would keep him. I am quite comfortable keeping him. Whilst he's in my transfer thoughts for moving out of my team, he's not an emergency transfer that I think needs to happen immediately. He's playing for Man City, and I think if he'd got an assist or an attacking return in his first few games, nobody would be considering selling him with those fixtures. I think because he just didn't start in the most recent game, we sort of have a short-term memory with that sort of thing, and he is more likely to start than not. And I do think he is a good option all the way up to game week 12, if not beyond. So those are the three most bought and sold players in FPL so far this game week. Let me know if there's any other players you want some advice on, what thoughts, what I would do if I had them in my team. And if you've got any questions in general as well, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video. It is free to do so, and we're a small channel trying to grow, so it is really appreciated and does make a difference as well. So good luck in this game week. Hope it works out for you, and I will see you in the next one.